The three cargo ships moved slowly through the dark emptiness of space. They were old ships, built for carrying goods, and not for fighting. Their hulls were painted white with blue stripes, the colors of the Volani people. Inside them were thousands of boxes filled with medicine, food, and clean water. All of it was meant for a colony on the far side of the galaxy, where terrible sickness was killing people every day. Ambassador Therese stood on the bridge of the lead ship. Looking out at the stars through the large window, she was tall and thin, like all Volani, with skin that looked like pale blue crystal. When light hit her face, it created small rainbows that danced across the walls. Her people were beautiful, but fragile. Their bones broke easily. Their skin could crack in cold temperatures. They were a peaceful species who had never fought a war in their entire history. The area of space they were traveling through was called the Disputed Corridor. It was a dangerous place. No government controlled it. No laws protected travelers. Pirates and raiders hunted here, looking for easy targets. Thyres had begged the Volani Council to send military escorts, but they had refused. There were no ships to spare, they said. The medicine was needed too badly to wait, so here she was, leading 3 defenseless cargo ships through the most dangerous part of the galaxy. Her communications officer, a young Volani named Pell, sat at his station nearby. He was nervous. His crystal fingers tapped against his console in a rapid pattern that showed his fear. Thyres did not blame him. She was afraid too. She just hid it better. The navigator spoke up. His voice was calm, but there was tension underneath it. They were approaching a large asteroid field. It would take several hours to go around it, but going through it was too risky. Thyres ordered the ships to change course. That was when the sensors began to scream. 7 ships appeared from behind the asteroids. They had been hiding there, waiting. Their hulls were black and red, covered in weapons and armor. Thyres recognized them immediately. Corax raiders, the most feared pirates in this sector of space. They attacked without mercy and never left survivors who could identify them. Thyres felt her heart. A small organ made of the same crystal as her skin began to beat faster. It made a soft ringing sound inside her chest. Fear. Pure. Fear. The Corax ships spread out in a formation that surrounded the convoy. There was nowhere to run. The cargo ships were too slow to escape. They had no weapons to fight back. Thyres looked at her crew and saw the same understanding in their eyes. This was the end. The leader of the Corax raiders sent a message. His face appeared on the main screen. He was huge and terrifying, with thick gray skin covered in natural armor plates. His eyes were small and yellow, filled with cruelty. His name was Draven Mole, and he was wanted for crimes in over 30 star systems. He smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. His voice was deep and rough. He told Thyres that her ships now belonged to him. The cargo would be sold. The crew would be taken as slaves or killed, depending on his mood. He gave her 1 hour to surrender peacefully. If she refused, he would blow her ships apart and pick through the wreckage. Thyres closed the channel. She would not give him the satisfaction of seeing her despair. Pell looked at her with wide, frightened eyes. He asked if they should surrender. Maybe the Corax would show mercy. Thyres shook her head. The Corax did not know the meaning of mercy. Surrender would only mean a slower death. She told Pell to send a distress signal. Send it on every frequency. Send it to every corner of space. Maybe someone would hear. Maybe someone would care. Pell did as she asked. The signal went out into the void. A desperate cry for help from 3 small ships facing certain death. For several long minutes, there was no response. Thyres stood at the window, watching the Corax ships circle like predators around wounded prey. She thought about her family back home. She thought about the sick colonists who would never receive their medicine. She thought about all the things she would never do. All the words she would never say. Then Pell made a small sound of surprise. A response had come. It was not from the Volani government. It was not from any of the major powers. It came from a small outpost 3 star systems away. A human outpost. Thyres felt her hope die before it had even fully formed. Humans, of all the species who could have answered. It had to be humans. She knew about them, of course. Everyone in the galaxy knew about humans. They came from a planet called Earth, a world so dangerous it was classified as a Class 12 death world. The gravity was crushing. The atmosphere was corrosive. Predators filled every corner of land and sea. Volcanoes erupted constantly. The weather could kill in minutes, and somehow, impossibly. Humans had evolved there and survived. But surviving on a dangerous planet did not make them powerful. Humans were small. They had no natural weapons, no claws or fangs or armor. They bled easily and died from wounds that other species could survive. They had only been traveling through space for about 200 years. They were newcomers, primitives. What could they possibly do against 7 Corax warships? The human voice on the communication channel was rough and tired. It belonged to a woman who spoke with simple words. She said her name was Voss. She said help was coming. She told Thyres to hang on for 3 hours. Just 3 hours? Thyres wanted to believe her. She wanted to have hope, but she knew the truth. 3 hours was too long. The Corax would not wait that long. And even if they did, what would the humans do when they arrived? Get themselves killed alongside the Villani? She thanked the human anyway. It was polite to thank someone who was trying to help, even if that help was useless. The Corax intercepted the transmission. They heard everything. And on the main screen, Thyres could see Draven Mole beginning to laugh. His laughter was terrible. It echoed through the channel, loud and mocking. He could not believe what he had just heard. Humans. Humans were coming to save the convoy. This was the funniest thing he had heard in years. He broadcast his laughter to all ships, Corax and Villani alike. He wanted everyone to hear his amusement. The mighty Corax raiders, threatened by creatures who could die from a simple change in temperature. What a joke. Thyres turned away from the screen. She could not bear to watch his mockery. She walked to a quiet corner of the bridge and closed her eyes. She began to pray to the old gods of her people, gods she had not believed in since she was a child. She prayed for a miracle. She prayed for salvation, but deep in her crystal heart, she did not believe salvation was coming. The clock began to count down. 3 hours until the humans arrived? 3 hours until the end. Outside the window, the Corax ships waited like patient hunters. They had all the time in the world, and they were going to enjoy every moment of what came next. Draven Mole sat on his command throne and laughed until his sides hurt. His crew watched him with nervous smiles, unsure if they should join in or stay quiet. The warlord's moods could change quickly, and no one wanted to anger him. But this time, his joy was real. Humans. The Villani had called for humans to save them. It was like calling for children to fight a war. It was so stupid that it was actually beautiful. Dravone was old for a Corax. He had been raiding ships for over 40 years. He had killed hundreds of people from dozens of species. He had built his reputation on blood and fear, and he was proud of it. No one challenged the Corax. No one dared. He had seen humans before. Several times, in fact. They visited space stations and trading posts just like everyone else. They were soft creatures, pink and brown and easily damaged. Their bodies had no natural protection. They wore clothes to cover their weak skin. They ate cooked food because their stomachs could not handle raw meat. They needed to sleep for hours every day or their minds stopped working properly. Pathetic. That was the word Draven used to describe them. Absolutely pathetic. He stood up from his throne and walked to the main screen. His body was massive, nearly 8 feet tall, and covered in thick armor plates that had grown from his own skin. His hands ended in claws that could tear through metal. His teeth could bite through bone. He was a predator from a predator world, and he feared nothing. His second in command, a scarred female named Korith, approached him. She asked if they should attack the convoy now, before the humans arrived. Why wait? Why give the prey any chance of escape? Draven shook his head. He wanted to wait. He wanted the humans to come. He wanted to destroy them in front of the Villani, so that everyone would see how foolish it was to call for human help. This would be a story told across the galaxy. The day the Korax crushed the so-called Deathworlders like insects, he opened a channel to the Volani convoy. Ambassador Thuries appeared on his screen, her crystal face showing no emotion. But Draven could see the tiny cracks forming around her eyes. Stress fractures. Her own body was betraying her fear. He smiled at her. He told her that he had decided to wait. He was curious about these humans. He wanted to meet them before he killed everyone. She should thank him for this gift of extra time. Perhaps she could use it to pray. Thyri said nothing. She simply closed the channel. Draven laughed again and turned to his crew. He ordered them to prepare for the humans. Not because he expected a real fight, but because he wanted the victory to be properly recorded. He wanted cameras on every ship. He wanted the whole galaxy to see what happened to anyone stupid enough to challenge the Korax. The hours passed slowly. Draven used the time to check his weapons and sharpen his claws. He ate a meal of raw meat, tearing into it with his teeth, while his officers watched with respect. He was their leader, their warlord, their god. They worshipped his strength. His communications officer reported that they were intercepting signals from the approaching human ships. There were 5 of them. 5 small warships against 7 Korax raiders. The humans were outnumbered and outgunned. This was going to be easy. Draven studied the information about human ships. They were ugly things, all sharp angles and gray metal. They did not have the elegant curves of Volani ships or the brutal majesty of Korax vessels. They looked like they had been built by creatures who did not understand beauty, only function. Their weapons were standard. Missiles, energy cannons, nothing special. Their shields were weak compared to Korax technology. Their armor was thick, but not impressive. Everything about them seemed average, mediocre, unremarkable. Korath pointed out that humans did have one strange advantage. Their ships could accelerate faster than most other vessels. Humans could survive higher gravity forces because they came from a heavy world. But what good was speed when you had nothing else? Draven agreed. Speed meant nothing in a real fight. The humans would learn this lesson soon. He broadcast another message to the Volani convoy. This time, he wanted the humans to hear as well. He introduced himself formally, stating his name, his title, and the number of ships he had destroyed in his career. It was a long list. He was proud of every name on it. He then addressed the humans directly. He called them children. He called them weaklings. He asked them if they understood what they were flying into. Did they know that Korax warriors were the most feared fighters in the galaxy? Did they know that no one had ever defeated a Korax raiding fleet? He offered them a chance to turn around. He said he would let them go if they abandoned the Volani. It was not mercy, he explained. It was simply that killing humans would not bring him any glory. It would be like killing small animals. Not worth his time. He waited for a response. It came after a few seconds. A woman's voice, calm and steady. She identified herself as Captain Elena Voss of the United Nations ship Perseverance. She thanked Draven for his offer, but declined. The Volani had called for help, and help was coming. Nothing would change that. Draven felt a flash of annoyance. The human did not sound afraid. She should be afraid. Everyone was afraid of the Korax. He told her she was making a mistake. He told her she would die screaming. He told her that her ships would be torn apart and her crew would be fed to his warriors. Captain Voss was quiet for a moment. Then she spoke again. Her voice was still calm, but there was something underneath it. Something hard and cold. She said she had heard his threats. She said she was not impressed. She said the Korax had clearly never fought humans before. Draven laughed at this. Of course, the Korax had never fought humans. Why would they? Humans were prey, not predators. They were nothing, Captain Voss said one final thing before closing the channel. She said Draven would understand soon. She said all his years of raiding had not prepared him for what was coming. She said humans did not fight like other species. Then the channel went silent. Draven stared at the blank screen. For the first time in many years, he felt something strange in his chest. Not fear exactly. Korax did not feel fear. but something like curiosity. What made this human so confident? What did she know that he did not? He pushed the feeling away. It was nothing. The human was bluffing, trying to seem brave. It was the kind of thing prey did when they had no other options. He returned to his throne and settled into it. The humans would arrive in less than an hour. And when they did, he would teach them the truth about the universe. The strong survived. The weak died. And humans were very, very weak. His crew prepared for battle. Weapons were charged. Shields were raised. Boarding parties were assembled. Everyone was ready for an easy victory. Outside, the stars watched in silence. They had seen many battles. They would see many more. But this battle would be different. This battle would change everything. Draven did not know it yet. But he was about to learn why humans had survived on a death world. He was about to learn what happened when you pushed them too far. He was about to meet the real monsters of the galaxy, and they were coming for him. The sensors detected the human ships before anyone could see them. They were approaching fast, much faster than normal ships traveled through real space. Draven leaned forward on his throne, watching the dots on his tactical display grow closer. Then something happened that made no sense. The human ships were still in hyperspace. Everyone knew that ships had to slow down before exiting hyperspace. The transition had to be gradual, controlled. If you exited too fast, the energy release could tear your ship apart. Every species in the galaxy followed this rule. It was basic physics. It was common sense the humans did not seem to care about. Common sense. The 5 human warships dropped out of hyperspace right in the middle of the Corax formation. They did not slow down first. They did not take a safe approach. They simply appeared, like ghosts, walking through walls. Their hulls screaming with energy discharge that should have destroyed them. Draven jumped to his feet. His claws dug into the arms of his throne, leaving deep scratches in the metal. This was impossible. No one could exit hyperspace like that. The stress would kill the crew. The energy feedback would fry every system on the ship. But there they were. 5 human warships, alive and whole, sitting less than 1,000 meters from his fleet. Close enough to see with the naked eye through the window, close enough to touch. His navigator collapsed at his station. The shock was too much for him. Medical officers rushed to help him while alarms screamed throughout the ship. The other Corax vessels were reporting the same chaos. Crews were panicking. Systems were overloading from the sudden appearance of hostile ships at point-blank range. Draven forced himself to stay calm. This was a trick, nothing more. The humans had taken a risk and gotten lucky. It would not save them. He opened his mouth to give orders, but before he could speak, a hail came through. The face of Captain Alina Voss appeared on his screen. She was human, obviously. Small and soft, with pale skin covered in old scars. One scar ran down the side of her face, from her temple to her jaw. It looked like a burn mark, twisted and rough. Her hair was short and gray. Her eyes were dark brown, almost black. They did not blink. Those eyes were the first thing that made Draven hesitate. He had looked into the eyes of many creatures over the years. He had seen fear and desperation and pleading in those eyes. He had enjoyed it. But this human's eyes held none of those things. She looked at him like he was already dead. Like this battle was already over and she was just waiting for him to realize it. She spoke. Her voice was the same as before, calm and steady. She said the Villani convoy was under Earth's protection. She said Draven had 60 seconds to power down his weapons and surrender. If he did this, his crew would be treated fairly according to galactic law. If he refused, there would be no mercy. Draven felt his rage building. This tiny creature dared to threaten him. This soft little human dared to give orders to a Corax warlord. He snarled at her. He pointed out that his fleet still outnumbered hers. 7 ships against 5. The humans had made an impressive entrance. But impressive entrances did not win battles. Numbers 1, battles. Weapons, 1 battles. Strength 1 battles. Captain Voss did something strange then. She smiled. It was not a friendly smile. It was not the kind of smile you gave to a friend or a family member. It was the kind of smile a predator gave to prey just before the killing bite. Her lips pulled back to show her teeth, white and flat and somehow terrifying. She said she knew the numbers. She said she almost felt bad for Draven and his crew. Then she closed the channel. Draven roared in fury. He slammed his fist against his command console so hard that it cracked. He ordered all ships to attack. He wanted the humans destroyed. He wanted their ships ripped apart. He wanted their bodies floating in the cold vacuum of space. The Corax fleet responded immediately. 7 ships turned their weapons toward the human vessels and opened fire. Energy beams and missiles filled the space between them. It was more firepower than most species saw in their entire lifetimes. It was enough to destroy a small moon. The human ships moved. They moved wrong. They accelerated in ways that should have crushed their crews into paste. They twisted and turned at angles that should have torn their hulls apart. They danced through the Corax barrage like water flowing around stones, taking some hits but avoiding most. Draven watched in disbelief. His tactical officers were shouting reports that made no sense. The human ships were pulling 20, 30, 40 times the normal gravity. No living creature could survive that. It was impossible. But humans came from a death world. Their bodies had evolved to survive crushing gravity. What would kill other species was just uncomfortable for them. They had turned their weakness into a weapon. The human ships returned fire while they moved. Their weapons were not special, but their aim was perfect. Every shot hit something important. Engines, weapons arrays, shield generators. They were not trying to destroy the Corax ships. They were crippling them, taking away their ability to fight or flee. One of Draven's cruisers exploded, then another. The Perseverance had gotten behind them and hit their reactors with precise surgical strikes. No wasted shots. No mercy. Then came the worst part. The part that would haunt Corax nightmares for generations. 2 human ships. Matched velocity with a Corax raider and locked onto its hull. Draven watched on his screen as armored figures emerged from airlocks and began cutting through the enemy ship's hull. Boarding parties? The humans were boarding a Corax vessel. This was insane. No one boarded Corax ships. Corax warriors were the most dangerous fighters in known space. They were built for close combat. Their armor was natural. Their weapons were part of their bodies. Fighting them hand-to-hand was suicide. Draven opened a channel to the boarded ship. He wanted to see what was happening. He wanted to watch his warriors tear the foolish humans apart. What he saw instead changed everything he believed about the universe. The humans were winning. They wore heavy armor that made them larger, stronger, faster. They carried weapons that fired projectiles fast enough to punch through Corax armor plates. And they fought with a ferocity that Draven had never seen in any species before. One human took a plasma blade through the shoulder. Instead of falling, instead of screaming, the human grabbed the Corax warrior who had stabbed him and broke the warrior's neck with his other hand. Then the human pulled out the blade, threw it aside, and kept fighting. Another human was surrounded by 3 Corax. She should have died. Any other creature would have died. But she ducked under their attacks, rolled between their legs, and came up shooting. All 3 Corax fell before they could turn around. These were not the soft, weak creatures Draven had expected. These were monsters wearing human skin. These were the products of a world that had tried to kill them every day for millions of years. They had not just survived. They had become something terrifying. Draven felt the unfamiliar sensation of fear creeping into his hearts. He pushed it down, but it would not stay down. For the first time in his life, he understood what it meant to be prey. The battle was only 15 minutes old, and half his fleet was already gone. He looked at the Perseverance through his window. The human ship turned toward him, its weapons glowing with power. Captain Voss was coming for him personally, and Draven realized with cold certainty that he was going to lose. The battle raged across the void of space, and Ambassador Theris watched every moment of it from her bridge. She could not understand what she was seeing. The Villani had always believed that violence was the tool of primitive minds, that civilized species solved problems with words and compromise. But there was nothing primitive about what the humans were doing. They fought with a terrible precision, like artists painting with fire and blood. The Corax outnumbered them. The Corax had bigger ships, more weapons, stronger armor. None of it mattered. The humans cut through them like a sharp knife through soft fruit. Pell stood beside Thyres, his crystal mouth hanging open in shock. He had stopped trying to make sense of the battle. He just watched, unable to look away. On the tactical display, they could see everything. 2 Corax ships were trying to flee, their engines burning at maximum power. A human destroyer chased them down in seconds, its speed almost obscene. It did not destroy them. Instead, it disabled their engines with careful shots, leaving them drifting helplessly. The humans did not want them to escape. The humans wanted witnesses. 3 other Corax ships were surrounded and being boarded. The communications channels were filled with screaming, not human screams. Corax screams, the sound of the galaxy's most feared warriors dying at the hands of creatures it called weak. Dravenmol's flagship was the last one still fighting. The Perseverance circled it like a hunting animal, taking shots at its weapons and shields but not going for the kill. Captain Voss was playing with him. She was showing him, and everyone watching, that she could destroy him whenever she wanted. Thyres zoomed her. Display to show the interior of one of the boarded Corax ships. What she saw made her crystal stomach twist with a sensation she had never felt before. Human soldiers moved through the corridors in perfect formation. They were covered in powered armor that made them look like metal giants. Their movements were fast and smooth, almost beautiful in their efficiency. They checked every corner, covered every angle, killed every Corax that tried to stop them. One group of humans reached the Corax bridge. The door was sealed with heavy blast doors designed to stop any attack. A human soldier stepped forward, carrying a device Thyres did not recognize. The soldier attached it to the door and stepped back. The blast doors did not explode. They melted. The device generated heat so intense that metal turned to liquid in seconds. The humans walked through the glowing hole like it was nothing. Like walking through fire was just another part of their day. The Corax bridge crew tried to fight. They were large and armed with plasma weapons. They should have been terrifying. But the humans did not seem to notice. They moved through the defenders with mechanical precision, shooting some and fighting others hand to hand. Thyres watched a human grab a Corax by the throat and lift him off the ground. The Corax was twice the human's size, but it did not matter. The powered armor gave the human strength beyond anything natural. The human threw the Corax across the bridge like he weighed nothing. In less than 2 minutes, the bridge was secured. The Corax captain knelt on the floor with human weapons pointed at his head. He was shaking. A Corax warrior shaking with fear. Thyres had not known that was possible. Back outside, something terrible happened. One of the human ships, a smaller vessel called the Castellan, was positioned near the Villani convoy. It had stayed back to protect them, while the other 4 engaged the Corax. Now, one of the damaged Corax raiders was drifting toward the convoy. Its engines were destroyed, but its momentum was carrying it forward. If it hit the cargo ships, it would destroy them. All the medicine, all the supplies, all the Villani crew members would be lost. The Castellan moved to intercept, but there was no way to stop the drifting raider. It was too big, moving too fast. Weapons could not slow it down. Tractor beams could not hold it. Thyres understood what was about to happen a moment before it did. She screamed a warning, but it was too late. The Castellan accelerated toward the Corax raider, not away from it, toward it. The human ship turned its bow toward the enemy vessel and fired its engines at maximum power. It was going to ram the raider. It was going to use its own body as a weapon. The collision was spectacular and horrible. Both ships crumbled together in a storm of metal and fire. The explosion lit up the darkness of space like a small sun. When it faded, there was nothing left of either vessel. Just debris, floating slowly away from the convoy it had saved. Therese felt tears forming in her eyes. A Villani response to extreme emotion. 72 humans had been on that ship. 72 beings who had traveled 3 star systems to help strangers. They had known what they were doing. They had chosen to die so that others could live. The battle was over. 4 Korax ships were destroyed. 2 were disabled and captured. 1, Draven's flagship, was surrounded by human vessels with nowhere to go. Captain Voss hailed the Korax warlord one final time. Her face was calm, but Therese could see something burning in her eyes. The Castellan had been her ship. Those had been her people. And now she was looking at the creature responsible for their deaths. She gave Draven one chance to surrender. Just one. Her voice was quiet, almost gentle. But there was death hiding behind every word. Draven surrendered. His voice cracked as he gave the order for his crew to stand down. The mighty Korax warlord, the terror of the disputed corridor, gave up without a final fight. He had seen what humans could do. He did not want to see any more. Human boarding parties entered his ship within minutes. They found him on his bridge, standing alone. His crew had fled to other parts of the ship, too afraid to stay near him. They knew the humans were coming for their leader, and they did not want to be nearby when it happened. The humans did not kill him. They could have. Thyres could see in their eyes that they wanted to. But they followed their orders. They put restraints on his wrists and ankles and led him off his own bridge like a common criminal as they walked through the corridors. Korax crew members pressed themselves against the walls to let them pass. They would not meet the eyes of the humans. They would not even look at them. The smell of fear filled the ship, sharp scent that Korax produced when they were truly terrified. Draven Mole, who had laughed at the thought of human rescuers just hours ago, walked in silence. His head was down. His armor was scratched and dented from the battle. Blood dripped from a wound on his face where a human had struck him. He looked old. He looked broken. He looked like exactly what he was, a predator, who had finally met something more dangerous than himself. The humans loaded him onto a transport shuttle and flew him past the Villani convoy. They wanted Thyres to see. They wanted her to know that the creature who had threatened her people was now in chains. Thyres watched the shuttle pass her window. For a moment, just a moment, she thought she saw Draven look up at her. His yellow eyes, once filled with cruelty and arrogance, were empty now. He had learned a lesson that would stay with him forever. Some prey should never be hunted. Some creatures should never be challenged. And humans, despite their soft skin and weak bodies, were the most dangerous beings in the galaxy. The battle was over. But for Thyres, the questions were just beginning. Who were these humans, really? What had made them this way? And why had they come so far to save people they had never met? She needed to understand. The whole galaxy needed to understand, because everything they thought they knew about humans was wrong. The Villani convoy reached the plague colony 3 days later. The medicine was delivered. Thousands of lives were saved. But Ambassador Thyres barely noticed any of it. Her mind was stuck on what had happened in the disputed corridor. The human ships had escorted them the entire way. 4 ships now, not 5. The space where the Castellan should have been flying was empty, a constant reminder of the price that had been paid. Captain Voss had not spoken much during the journey. She spent most of her time on the Perseverance, dealing with the captured Korax and communicating with Earth, but on the final day, she accepted Thyres' invitation to visit the Villani ship for a meal. They sat together in the ambassador's private quarters. The room was designed for Villani comfort, with soft lights and gentle music. Thyres had prepared food that she thought humans could eat, simple things with mild flavors. Voss accepted everything politely and ate without complaint. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Thyres studied the human woman, trying to understand her. Voss was not large or physically impressive. Without her armor, she looked almost fragile. Her hands were small and scarred. Her body showed the signs of age and hard living. She looked like someone's grandmother, not like a warrior who had destroyed a Korax fleet. Finally, Thyres asked the question that had been burning in her mind since the battle. Why? Why had the humans come? Why had they risked their lives, lost their people, for strangers from a species they had never met? Voss was quiet for a moment. She looked out the window at the stars, her expression thoughtful. When she spoke, her voice was soft. She talked about Earth, about the world humans came from. She explained that Earth was dangerous, yes, but that was not what made humans who they were. What made humans special was that they had learned to survive together. On Earth, she said, no human could survive alone. The world was too harsh. The predators were too strong. The weather was too violent. So humans had learned to form groups, to protect each other, to fight for each other. They called it many things over the centuries: tribe, family, nation, alliance. But it all came from the same basic truth. Humans needed each other. When a human was in danger, other humans came to help. It did not matter if they were strangers. It did not matter if helping was dangerous. It was simply what humans did. It was written into their very nature, burned into their minds by millions of years of evolution. Diary said she understood cooperation. All civilized species cooperated, but this was different. The humans had nothing to gain from saving the convoy. They had lost a ship and 72 crew members. They had spent resources and taken risks for no reward. Voss smiled at this, a sad and tired smile. She said that was where other species got it wrong. They thought cooperation was about gain, about trading favors and building debts. But human cooperation was not like that. It was not about what you could get. It was about what was right. She talked about a concept called empathy, the ability to feel what another being feels, to share their pain and fear and hope. Humans had evolved this ability as a survival tool, but it had become something more. It had become the foundation of everything they believed. When Thyres sent her distress call, Voss had felt her fear. Not literally, but in a deep and real way. She had imagined what it must be like to be surrounded by enemies with no hope of survival. She had felt the ambassador's desperation as if it were her own, and she had known, without any doubt, that she had to help. The crew of the Castellan had felt the same thing. When they saw the Corax raider drifting toward the convoy, they had not thought about their own lives. They had thought about the Villani who would die if they did nothing. And they had made their choice. Thyres felt her crystal heart aching in her chest. She did not fully understand what Voss was describing. The Villani were a peaceful people, but they were also logical. They calculated costs and benefits. They made decisions based on reason. The idea of sacrificing everything for strangers, with no expectation of return, was almost impossible for her to grasp. But she could see that it was real. She had seen it with her own eyes. She asked Voss about the Castellan crew. Did they have families? Did they know they were going to die? Voss's face grew still. She nodded slowly. Most of them had families, she said. Parents, partners, children. They knew exactly what they were doing when they turned toward the Corax ship. They had time to say goodbye over the communications channel. Some of them did. Others just said they loved whoever was listening and asked them to be strong. Tears were flowing down Thyres's crystal cheeks now. The Villani did not cry often, but when they did, their tears left tiny cracks in their skin. She did not care. She let herself feel the grief, the gratitude, the overwhelming awe at what these strange creatures had done. Voss reached across the table and took Thyres's hand. Her grip was gentle, careful not to damage the delicate crystal. She said that Thyres should not feel sad. The Castellan crew had died doing exactly what they wanted to do. They had died protecting innocent people. In human culture, there was no better death. Thyres asked if there would be a ceremony for them, some way to honor their sacrifice. Voss said yes. When the Perseverance returned to Earth space, there would be a memorial. The names of the 72 would be added to a wall that listed every human who had died protecting others. Their families would receive honors and support. Their stories would be taught to future generations. But the best honor, Voss said, was simply to remember them, to tell their story, to make sure the galaxy knew what they had done and why. Thyres made a decision in that moment. She would return to her homeworld and speak before the Villani Council. She would tell them everything that had happened. She would make sure her people understood what humans were really like. More than that, she would propose an alliance. The Villani had always avoided military entanglements, preferring neutrality and peace. But peace was worthless if you could not defend it. The humans had shown her that. She said this to Voss, and the human captain smiled. Not the predator smile from the battle, but a warm and genuine expression. She said she would recommend the same thing to Earth's government. The galaxy was dangerous, and good species needed to stand together. They talked for several more hours. Voss told Thyres about Earth, about its history and its wars and its long struggle to become something better. She talked about human art and music and love. She talked about the things that made life worth living. Thyres shared stories of her own people, their crystal cities and their gentle traditions, their fear of violence and their hope for a universe where no one had to be afraid. By the time Voss returned to her ship, Thyres felt like she had made a friend, a true friend, something she had never expected to find in a human. The convoy completed its mission and went home. The plague colony was saved. The Corax raiders were put on trial and sentenced to prison. Draven Mole spent the rest of his life in a cell, broken and silent, never laughing again. But the real impact of that day spread across the galaxy like ripples in a pond. The story was told and retold on thousands of worlds. The day the humans came. The day the Deathworlders fought for strangers. The day everything changed. Thyres gave her speech to the Villani Council. It was broadcast across 40 star systems. She spoke for 3 hours, describing every detail of the battle and everything she had learned afterward. She ended with a warning and a plea. Do not make enemies of the humans, she said. They are more dangerous than you can imagine. They come from a world of death, and they have learned to survive against impossible odds. They fight without mercy, and they never, ever give up. But more importantly, she said, pray that they consider you a friend. Because when humans call you friend, they will protect you with everything they have. They will cross the galaxy to save you. They will die for you without hesitation. They will stand beside you against any enemy. No matter how strong, the Villani Council voted to pursue an alliance with Earth. It was unanimous across the galaxy. Other species began to reconsider their views on humanity. These were not the weak primitives they had dismissed for so long. These were the children of a death world, forged in fire and blood and millions of years of struggle. They were kind and compassionate and terrifying all at the same time. The universe would never look at humans the same way again, and somewhere on Earth. 72 families received letters telling them that their loved ones had died heroes. They cried and mourned, and eventually found peace. Their children grew up knowing that their parents had saved thousands of lives. Their grandchildren learned their names in school. The crew of the Castellan was never forgotten, and the humans kept doing what humans had always done. They explored the stars. They made friends and enemies,